This is After the Gridiron, a podcast featuring interviews with retired football players. If you're a fan of After the Gridiron, make sure you subscribe to the show to ensure that you won't miss an episode. Today's episode is sponsored by Symphonies. Symphonies is an online store that provides custom clothing and accessories. They have a number of quality products available at affordable prices. They offer custom, unique, funny, and inspirational products that you won't find anywhere else. So go to www.symphonies.ca to shop for your next purchase. And as a special offer for our listeners, enter promo code GRIDIRON to get 15% off your purchase. So there's no excuse not to check it out. Again, that's www.symphonies.ca. Symphonies. Great products, great prices.
All right, everyone, welcome to the show. I am your host, Lyle Green, and today, as our guest, we have retired football player Randy Chevrier. So Randy played 16 seasons, a long time as a professional in the NFL and CFL, and some in the NFL Europe as well. He was the 7th round pick in the NFL draft by the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 2001 draft. He's also drafted in the CFL draft by the who were drafted by in CFL?
Edmonton Eskimos.
Edmonton, that's right. Edmonton Eskimos is a fifth pick overall in the first round. He went to McGill University, and in his pro career, he had three Grey Cup championships in 2003, 2008, and 2014. And also in 2014, he was named the Tom Pate Award winner. So Tom Pate Award is awarded to the player who's done great stuff in the community and as well as on the field. So that's a huge award to have, and he was a winner of that in 2014. And now Randy's teaching and also working as a firefighter in the Calgary area. So, Randy, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Wow, thanks for having me. It's great to be with an old teammate.
Yes, part of that, teammates, and also part of the greatest draft in CFL history. I forgot to mention that earlier.
I think it is. I mean, before they kept stats and before they publicized it on TV and all this fancy stuff they do these days, I think guys from our draft class lasted quite a long time in the league. I think there was
Definitely.
Yourself, there was you, myself, Angus, linebacker from Toronto, Kevin Ivan was there, Scott Schultz, good crew of guys came through. I mean, it's hard to find 2 or 3 guys that will even play a 5-year career, and I think we had 5 or 6 guys that played maybe almost 10 years or more.
Played at least 10 or more, yeah, exactly. That's why I said it's the greatest draft class in CFL history. No arguments.
the greatest draft class that no one ever knows about.
No one ever knows about, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Randy, so I usually like to start the show by asking our guests to say something about themselves that most people would know. So what would you say for that?
Oh, that's, I guess what most people wouldn't know is that I only started football at the age of 18, really. So I didn't have, I didn't have maybe be the typical football pedigree that most kids had. I missed high school football altogether. I got into football almost by accident, and I started at basically the age of 18, and almost 6 years later, I was running out of the tunnel for the Dallas Cowboys. So that was quite different, I would say.
Wow, that's amazing. So you didn't start till 18. So talk about how you got into football. So did you play other sports growing up, or?
Well, I grew up in Montreal, middle class, basically immigrant Italian family. We did a lot of sports on the street. My family didn't have a ton of money to afford organized sports, but eventually I played ice hockey when I could afford my own equipment in Bantam, I think it was. And I played hockey for a bunch of years, and my dream after high school was to join the military. And after high school, we have CEGEP in Quebec. When I was Yeah. So when I was applying for the military, I actually didn't get in because my eyesight was pretty poor, and it didn't allow me to apply for the military job I wanted, which was a soldier. So I had missed all my hockey camps that year, and I was in CEGEP, and a bunch of my friends. It wasn't very popular back in the day in Montreal. The Elements actually didn't exist back then when I grew up. So a bunch of my friends played football, but I never really knew about the sport, and they said that maybe I should come and try out. So long story short, basically, I played 1 full year of CEGEP for Vanier College, and then the year later I went to McGill, and 5-year career at McGill. After that, everything kind of fell into place, and I wound up playing professional after that for 16 years. So very, very lucky.
Yeah, the rest is history. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. A lot of ups and downs in between to get there, but for sure, I realize how blessed and how lucky I was to have the opportunities I have, and to honestly have the things fall into place the way they did. Because for every 1,000 guys that tries, maybe one guy makes it even to get a shot, right? So I know how lucky I was. I know how lucky I was.
We're definitely a small percentage of the population that are fortunate enough to play professional. So you're definitely fortunate to be able to get to where you were.
Yeah. No, so it was good. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. So you went to McGill. What was the reason that you chose McGill for university?
Well, actually, that's a great question, because at the time, honestly, when I was in high school thinking about the military, I didn't think of any sort of post-secondary education at the time, and sort of it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks when that kind of door slammed shut on me. And football was really because I was kind of an average student, and it was really because I fell in love with football that I had to start thinking about post-secondary education, because the quality of junior football in Quebec at the time wasn't very good, and it wasn't where I wanted to be, and so I started looking, and I actually had, because I grew up at home and I never even considered leaving home, it was really narrowed down to me for 2 universities, Concordia and McGill. And, I chose McGill because I got into the education faculty there, and I thought, you know what, I'll do my best to play football as long as I could, but I wanted something tangible, a degree that would prepare me for a job that wouldn't require more study after I was done my bachelor's. And McGill fortunately had a bachelor's in education that basically gave you all your qualifications to have a teaching certificate in Quebec. So that's why I chose that. It was sort of, football. I went there for football, but my plan B was that I'm going to have a teaching degree in my pocket that I can always use no matter what, which to this day I still use, even though it's kind of in my back pocket.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you're thinking far ahead and making plans, which is good, which a lot of guys don't end up doing. But you had the wisdom to look ahead and think of what you might be doing after football. So to have that teaching degree is definitely a plus for you, and definitely a good move for you for making that choice.
I would say I was really lucky I made that choice, because I wasn't historically known for making wise decisions as a kid.
Yeah.
But it was I would say it was one of the smartest decisions I had made in my life at that point, up until that point. Like, I always knew how to work hard, and I knew how to, but I was kind of one track mind. I thought military, and that ended. And then I didn't know. And it was honestly, again, I always feel blessed, because I don't think it's just me when I make a decision like that. If it wasn't really part of my usual behavior, to have made a decision like that, to get a teaching degree from such a prestigious university, whether I played football or not, it was such a smart decision, and I'm very lucky I made that decision as well, for sure. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, so okay, let's talk about your transition into pros and going into the NFL. Can you imagine just how you felt to be able to be in the NFL from where you were, and going from thinking about going to the military to a few years later you're in an NFL locker room with professional football players. You can imagine what that was like. So describe your first of all, your draft day, getting drafted by Jacksonville, and how you felt and the atmosphere there, and what was like in your first training camp in the NFL.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess to get there, you got to just talk a little bit about the college career. There were a lot of ups and downs, like everyone goes through in college. There was, there were times where I didn't think I was going to play, times where, it wasn't going my way. I had a couple of pretty tragic accidents happen in my college career that I had to bounce back. And I would say my time at McGill really taught me the values of perseverance and resilience and all the things that it takes to be just a tough, productive member of society. And that I literally owe all that to my 5 years at McGill. The things I went through, both highs and lows, prepared me for a lot afterwards. And I'm very grateful for that, because that was purely because of football. And I got to the NFL. It was kind of almost an impossibility back in the day when there was no YouTube. There was hardly an internet. You had to make 100 copies of VHS tapes and send them to everyone and their uncle that was associated with the team, to hope that one person, watches a videotape of this kid in a Canadian university that no one ever heard of, right? And that's pretty much what it was. Yeah. And what credited me, or what I credit to getting to the NFL, was some initial goal setting. My first day on campus at McGill, when I spoke to Charlie Bailey, the old head coach at McGill, and he had shown me some memorabilia from his days coaching, and I had saw a picture of two of his former players playing at the East-West Shrine game. And I saw this picture, and it kind of just amazed me, the grandeur of the stadium they were at in Palo Alto, California. And I was very naive. I mean, I had only played 1 year of organized football before then. And I stated, Coach, I want to go to the East-West Shrine game after my senior year. And he kind of laughed. He was chewing on a cigar. He kind of laughed, and he said, well, if you practice, you never know what you can do, right? But I put it down. I said I was going to do it, and then I kind of gave him some steps that I was going to take to get there. I told him I want to work hard to be the Rookie of the Year. I said I want to be an All-Canadian. And these were kind of, they were always in the back of my head while I was at McGill. So anytime I was down, I kept thinking, I got to crawl back up, because that's what I want to do. I didn't realize how impossible the East-West Shrine game goal was. I didn't realize that, at the time it was only 2 Canadians voted on by all the coaches in Canada. But I was so naive to the limits that most people would have placed on themselves, that I just went for everything that I set my mind to. So, but by the time I was leaving my third year at McGill, I decided I wanted to learn how to long snap, because at that point I had only played D-line. And going into my fourth year, we had a couple of guys that could snap, and we had graduated J.P. Darsh, who went on to like a 10-year career in the NFL as a long snapper, and another guy previous to him, Ryan Coughlin, played 3 or 4 years with the Alouettes. So I knew that long snapping could get my foot in the door. So I worked my butt off to learn how to snap, because I was terrible when I started. Like I was the worst ever. Like coach laughed when I said I wanted to snap, but he gave me a ball, and after my third year, I practiced every day and night to learn how to snap so I could be the snapper the next year. And in my fourth year at McGill, I wound up being the long snapper. I had a really good career as a defensive lineman as well while that was happening. And then my fifth year, same thing. I had become the starting long snapper. I had actually become a real dominant defensive lineman. I won the JP Metris in my fifth year and first team All-Canadian. And I realized my goal of getting nominated to the East-West Shrine game. And, there was a few other things I think you had heard. I'd been stabbed before my fifth year. So that was something I had to crawl back from to make sure I showed up for the season. But, there was a lot of fight in me. And the great thing about when I got to the East-West Shrine game is most of the guys there are all college all-stars from U.S. colleges. And if you play, whether you're a offensive lineman or a tight end or defensive lineman, if you're an all-star at those positions, chances are you're not a long snapper for the team, because they got hundreds of guys on the roster. And usually in the U.S. colleges, they have a specific guy to long snap. So at the time, I was the best long snapper at all of the East-West Shrine game, and the NFL coaches took notice. And that skill really turned some heads. And from the East-West Shrine game, I had a lot of NFL interest. I had a couple of teams come up, or one team come up to see me at McGill, the Colts. Old CFL coach Cal Murphy came to. Yeah, he gave me a pro day at McGill, and then from that pro day, I had a bunch of NFL teams. I had 2 teams fly me down for visits, the Packers and the Vikings, and by draft day, I had 4 or 5 teams interested, and I'll never forget. I was locked up in my sister's room on draft day. She's the only one in our house. She's the only one in our house that had a computer back in the day, and it was the days of the dial-up internet where it took 5 minutes to click on, right? So I was, and it does the funny noise, and here I was in my sister's room, holed up all weekend because, there was a chance I could have gone first day. There was a chance I could have gone second day, and back then it was only a 2-day draft. And I remember every 20 minutes or so clicking onto the internet, refreshing the ESPN.com page to see the draft stats, and then, unclicking right away to keep the phone line free, right? So I did that for the first day, and then I did that most of the second day, and I thought, oh, no one's going to call me. It was kind of frustrating. And you don't hear anything. And there's, like I said, it's not like we had an iPhone that you could check all the results. It was very interesting times.
As far as on the status.
No, I don't even think people understand. Half the people that will be listening to this will be like, what are you even talking about? But basically, it was like you're living in the dark with no power. And every once in a while, you got a flicker. And eventually, when the second round came through, I got a phone call, and it was Tom Coughlin from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And first question he said is, "Are you healthy?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, we're picking you in the next pick." And he's like, he's like, "You want to be a Jaguar?" I was like, "Yep." And he said, "Someone's going to call you in about an hour to arrange flight arrangements to come down for minicamp." And that was it. That was
nice.
pretty crazy. And it was pretty ecstatic. I almost couldn't believe it. I mean, McGill University, produces doctors, teachers, and lawyers and prime ministers, and not necessarily NFL football players. Although we had one in the NFL, my friend JP was there already.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was, but at the same time, the odds of 2 guys from McGill playing in the NFL.
School.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And in fact, if you want to tie that together, now there's another McGill guy playing for the Chiefs, and he's he's a full-on medical doctor, and he's a starting guard for the Chiefs. So pretty strong McGill connections in the NFL over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, no kidding. The football factory there in McGill.
Yeah. You know what? I'll say this, Lyle. I'll say this: of the 3 guys that have played in the NFL, and out of the two of 3 McGill guys lasted in the NFL. One of them was not a doctor, and I'm the one that didn't last. I only played 1 year, and they played probably the one guy's on his 5th year, and JP probably played 10 years. But my experience in the NFL was awesome. But certainly a real neat opportunity that once in a lifetime, if that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not sure if you know, but I'm a huge Cowboys fan. So we got to talk about your time in Dallas. What was it like playing for the greatest team in America's team in football and being part of the Dallas Cowboys? What was it like being a part of that organization?
Oh man, it was so cool, and I remember. So I was playing with the Jaguars in preseason, and our last preseason game we played the Cowboys, and it was pouring rain. And we were in Dallas playing, and it was pouring rain right through the old stadium roof, right? And their long snapper messed up in the game a few times, and I had a really great game. But unfortunately, the Jaguars were looking for someone that they felt could do more than just long snap, and on their depth chart, I was just snapper. So I was released right after camp, and we played that game on a Thursday. I was released on the Sunday. I flew home Sunday evening. By Monday night, I was back at the airport because the Cowboys signed me because they liked how I played in the game the week earlier or the few days earlier. Yeah. And I'll never forget. It was such a surreal experience. They brought me in the next day on a Tuesday. They brought me to their facility, and it was pouring rain in Dallas. I think it was like a hurricane had been rolling through. That's why it was raining so much. So they made me they brought me and the long snapper that was there into the locker room, and we each had to snap 10 balls. And right after we snapped the 10 balls, they called him into the locker room. They cut him, and they told me to put my suit on. And that was it. I made the team, and they drove me downtown and literally inserted me into a lineup 2 seconds before they were announcing the team to all the sponsors and season ticket holders. And most of the guys were like, "Who is this guy?" It was like a whirlwind. Like
you made the team in the locker room snap off, and then minutes later you're on the. Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Like it was literally, honestly, Lyle, was literally. They taped off 15 yards in the locker room. They didn't even have a regular marker. The coach walked it off with his feet. I snapped the ball 10 times. The other guy snapped the ball 10 times. They're like, "Okay, Mike, come to the office." They're like, "Chevy, get your stuff on." And I'm like, "Okay." And then next thing you know, I'm in an Escalade. They're ripping downtown. We run to the back of a hotel. They walk me in through the back doors. And, the kitchen in the hotel is like all like, they just, all these big guys are lined up, and they just put me in the lineup. And guys are like, "Who is this guy?" And I'm like, I think I'm on the team. And then next thing you know, it's like 2 seconds later. And then you just remember right off the plane, number 95, Randy Chevrier. And I have to walk out and wave. I didn't even know where I was going. And they said, "Just follow the light. It'll lead you." And I'm sitting with all the sponsors. I was so overwhelming, right? But from there, I got to play 8 games with the Cowboys. We had a really bad season that year. It was post Troy Aikman, post Deion Sanders, post Michael Irvin. So they were over the cap by a ton. The only big names that were there that most people would recognize, especially was Emmitt Smith. I got to play with.
Oh yeah,
and Rocket Ishmael was there, and Joey Galloway was there.
Okay.
But we lost 6 of 8 of the games I was there, and we just didn't have any consistency in any phase of the game, whether it was offense, defense, or special teams. And it was tough to play on a losing team. But I got to tell you, coming from the guy that never thought he would have a chance to play for the Dallas Cowboys, every day I went to work with a smile on my face. Even when they cut me, I was kind of, obviously you feel quite shameful being released in the middle of the season, especially knowing that everyone knows about it. Like, it's in the paper, everyone reads about it. You have to answer everyone, all your friends and family and people they know. "Oh, what happened? But at the same time, I always kept it in perspective. I said, "You know what? I didn't even know anything about football 6 years ago, and here I am, on a plane home from the Cowboys." But I had some good experiences with the Cowboys. Actually funny, like one of my idols when I started watching football was Doug Flutie. It was hard not to cheer for Flutie when he left the CFL and went to the NFL, and everywhere he went, he was successful, but he kept having to, fight for his place. And it was just, he was kind of the typical underdog story that you can get behind. And we played the Chargers, and he destroyed us. And here I was after the game. All I just wanted to do was go up to Doug Flutie and just tell him, "Oh, man, I'm such a big fan, and I followed you forever," and all that stuff. And so that was kind of a cool moment for me. And, it was also an interesting year because that was the year that the 9/11 happened. So there was a lot of uncertainty in the world at that time, and especially in the NFL. Like, you think that you're a target. The Cowboys were America's team, so there was definitely some intrigue behind the scenes there. And I remember flying into New York to play the Giants, basically a month after 9/11 happened, and I'll never forget flying in over New York, and you could still see the smoke just billowing out of the ground, like it hadn't settled. And there was some interesting images from that year. But all in all, definitely in hindsight, when I can reflect 16 years later, for sure it was a great time. And again, how many kids does that happen to, right? Like, every experience I've had in football, I'm truly aware of how special it was.
Yeah, definitely some special memories that will last forever, and you can always cherish your time there in the NFL for sure. All right, so let's talk about your time in the CFL. Now you went to Edmonton for some time, and then Calgary, and then Saskatchewan. So talk about your time coming back to the CFL and playing and winning some great cups up here.
Yeah, so Edmonton had drafted me, and when I came back from Europe, from NFL Europe, and I went to try out for the Bengals again in 2002. I wound up not making the club. And eventually, after about 30 days, the visa that I was under ran out. And that basically hindered any ability to try and sign with an NFL club that season. So I was sitting in Montreal. I was at a Montreal Expos ball game, watching the game, and I got a call from Coach Tom Higgins saying he desperately needed some Canadian D tackles. The Eskimos had lost a bunch of D tackles, Jed Roberts and Peterson, and a bunch of other guys had just gone down, and they were desperate for some Canadian defensive tackles. And I was wanting to get back in the game, and I wanted to keep fresh. And so I signed with Edmonton, and I finished out the 2002 season with them. I played a few games. We went to the Grey Cup against Montreal in Edmonton, and we lost, which was very heartbreaking. To go to a game, play in front of your own fans, and let them down. But instantly, I loved Edmonton. I loved the coaching staff, especially Coach Tom Higgins. He's such a great coach, such an honorable man. And I went back in 2003. Oh yeah, he's just the way he comports himself with integrity, and I just can't say enough about that man. And so much so that I'll talk about it later. But when he wound up the head coach in Calgary, that's why I came to Calgary. But 2003. We were still sore from the loss the year before, and we came back strong. Ricky Ray was our quarterback. We had great players like Alfred Payton and all these great players on the Edmonton squad, and it's like almost we couldn't be stopped. And we had a rough beginning to the season. But then we got caught in Toronto. There was a big East Coast blackout where we got stuck there for about 4 or 5 days. And and after that game kind of like really brought our team together against the Argonauts. And after that, it was like we couldn't be stopped. And we rolled all the way to the Cup, and it was such a great feeling. It was just a great bunch of guys, memories that you can never forget. And then after that, I was a free agent. I tried out again for the NFL. I signed with the Jets, made their off-season roster, played in the preseason with them. But again, I was released, and I thought maybe that would get me a look with another team. But unfortunately, no teams needed a long snapper or a D tackle during that season while I was available. And so after 2004, I came to Calgary. Coach Tom Higgins took over as the GM and head coach in Calgary, and I was a free agent. And he said, I remember it was January 2005, and he said the first person I want to bring in is you. So he brought me in, and he started building the club after that. Once CFL free agency hit in February, I think the first person they signed was Henry Burris. And, we built the club around there, and I think they won 4 games in 2004, and 2005 we won 11. And, we kept going. And again, my career in Calgary went from 2005 to 2015 was my final year there.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had a long and great career, and were able to, sustain yourself and keep yourself healthy, and to play for a long time, which is, like you said, it's a rarity to be able to play as long as you were able to play. It's a great thing that you're able to last for so long.
Yeah, I think for longevity and I think in football and any sport, what I learned is you have to be coachable. You have to be adaptable. You have to kind of set aside your ego. You have to have the right balance of, I know what's best for me, but also the coaches know what's best for me. I was a defensive tackle and a long snapper for most of my career. In 2008, we had a new coaching staff come in Calgary, and they saw me mostly as a long snapper, not necessarily a defensive tackle. And they told me that, I wasn't going to be playing much on the defense. And it was tough. It was tough because your ego says, this is what I trained for, not to be a long snapper, right? The long snapper was just a foot in the door, or so I thought. But eventually that became my bread and butter. And it took a while. Like I had a hard time accepting sometimes that was my role when I felt like I could do more. But I learned that you got to try and do what's best for the team. You got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. You got to make sure that your attitude is positive no matter what is thrown your way. And, they asked me to go on the offensive line in 2009, and I had no experience with that at all. But, I played with the offensive line for most of the rest of my career in Calgary. And I think the year you came to play with us, I was with the running backs. So being agile, being coachable, being able to adapt is huge, and keeping that positive attitude, because, it could take one string of negative thoughts to get you kind of out of your rhythm and not performing properly. And then when you get your chance to do something great, because you're not in the right mind space, you waste that chance, and then they look for someone else. So I think one thing I did was made sure I always kept positive, because I always knew there's a chance I could get an opportunity to do something great. And it's how I approached my 16 years. I used to tell everyone, I said, the season ended in November, and come December, I felt like I was training all over again like a rookie to prove myself. And and you know what, even today I could probably still play today, because that's my mentality when I'm in the fire department. I'm training hard and just wanting to keep up with the young guys and be ready for anything.
Yeah, definitely. As an athlete, you definitely have to learn to to be in our role, and to recognize what's needed for the team and what's best for the team. And like you said, we might have the ability to do more and the desire to do more, but depending on the team and the situation and the coaching staff, we might be asked to do different things or less than we are capable of doing. But for the sake of the team, it's the best thing to do. And the guys that can't do that don't end up playing long, or they end up disturbing the team or disrupting the chemistry of the team, which hurts the team in terms of wins. So for you to recognize to maintain the positive attitude, and to always do what's best for the team was great, and definitely contributed to your longevity in the league for sure.
Yeah, no, I would say for me personally, one of the greatest seasons I had was the season where I played the least. We mentioned it off the air before, but when I won the Tom Pate Award in 2014, we won the Grey Cup that year as well. And I only played in the first 3 games of the year, and for the rest of the year, I was sad, because the team thought, playing another player, a good friend of mine, Tim St. Pierre, could offer them more flexibility in the roster, because he was also a fullback, and he was, he was a little faster, a little agile. He played more special teams than me, whereas I just did the long snapping, and so they went with that roster decision, and for basically, 18 weeks, right up and through the Grey Cup, I just had to make sure I maintained the positive attitude, being a leader, being allowed to do the things they let me do. And every day I went to work and I thought, what, I'm a 39-year-old man. Yeah, I'm not playing on Sundays, but that doesn't define me as a professional athlete. It's what I do all week leading up, and I just tried to be the first guy in, the last guy out, help guys out. My community work, all my bully prevention stuff, the women's cancer stuff. And again, I did that because I was choosing that positive attitude. I didn't do it for any recognition or anything. But, at the end of the year, when it came time to voting for the Herm Harrison Award in Calgary, and then the Tom Pate Award across the CFL, I was super floored when all the guys voted for me. And it goes to show you that it doesn't matter even if you're on the field, it's your attitude will be noticed, and I tell everyone, I say, I have a picture of me with the Grey Cup and I didn't even play in the game. And that's probably my most proud moment as a professional player, because when I hosted that Grey Cup, I felt part of that journey. Whereas I know a lot of guys, if they don't play in a Grey Cup game, I've heard, stories of guys selling their rings because they didn't feel part of it, or just if they don't play in the game, they don't feel like they were part of the whole journey. And, there was no part of me that whole season, even when I was sitting down and maybe I wasn't where I wanted to be player-wise, there was no part of me that didn't feel like I wasn't doing everything I could to help the team win. And it was a very good learning moment for me, not just in football, but in life, right? Like, that's a big thing in life, where you're going to have to sometimes take a back seat, but still do your job or do a job, and your attitude determines how you feel. And because I chose positive, I felt great when we won, and I didn't feel like, I missed out or I wasn't sore or sour about it. So that was a huge, huge year in my career, 2014 for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's talk about the transitioning out of football. As we mentioned earlier on, you had that teaching degree that you got back in at McGill, but talk about when you started thinking about life after football and what you might want to get into after football.
Well, the funny thing is a couple of things tie into what we've been talking to. So when I got drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I got flown in for minicamp, as I mentioned, the first thing they said to us when I sat down was, "Welcome to the NFL, men. From this day forward, we're trying to replace you." And those words burnt into my brain. That was it was seared into my skull with a brand, because that's kind of what fueled me to keep going forever, was that fear that they're going to replace me. But also it kept me from being lazy in the off season. I was always doing stuff. I used my teaching degree and I substitute taught a lot, but I wanted to make sure that while I had the opportunity to work 6 months in the year and have time to either work or do something else, I wanted to make sure that I was going to find the thing that I really wanted to do when I was done. And I didn't just settle because out of necessity. So every year I did different things, I obviously I taught, I did real estate, I did mortgages, I was on the radio, I did TV, personal training, sales, you name it. Like almost every off season, I tried a few different things. Some of them lasted longer and some of them didn't. But at least I used to tell all the guys, I said, at least, when you have the opportunity to do things in the off season, it might not be what you want to do, but at least then you know what you definitely don't want to do. And I tried some careers that I definitely know I don't want to do. But fast forward to that season in 2014 where I sat on the bench, that's when I started realizing, okay, I'm 39 years old, my days are numbered. And, that was really when it hit me, because no matter how good I was, and I was still at the top of my game, I realized that you can't control anything but your effort. And if someone decides they don't want you to play or you're not going to contribute anymore, your days are limited. So that's when I started exploring different things. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a teacher yet. I had no slight against the profession, but I was looking for something else. I didn't know what it was. And that season was funny because I started having the opportunity when the team went on the road in the summer. I was left back home, and I went to a couple of barbecues here and there. And at these barbecues, I met some firefighters, and I started talking to them about their job, and everyone kept telling me, you know what, it's the greatest job in the world. And when you hear that from about 10 or 15 guys in the same profession, you think, you know what, I don't hear that from everyone in their profession. I know teachers that love their job, and I know teachers that hate their job. I know policemen that love their job and hate their job. Across all careers, I usually hear that. But every time I got to a firefighter, the first words they said is, it's the best job ever. And it just, I don't know. So I did some research, and former Calgary Stampeder great, Stu Laird, CFL Hall of Fame. He's a chief in the Calgary Fire Department. I got talking with him. I went to visit some firefighters, and slowly I realized that this is the career for me. And it was based on 3 principles that I love to live by, which is I love to help people, I love to be on a team, and I love physical work. And that's exactly what the Calgary Fire Department is, or any fire department. And so I applied in 2014, and it took about 3 years to get onto the department. So in 2017 is when I began my training with the City of Calgary Fire Department.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And now that you're on the department, is it everything all those firefighters were saying it was? Is it as great as they were saying?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, our first day of orientation, the big chief of the Calgary Fire Department, Steve Dongworth, who's our leader, the first thing he said is, you know what, men and women, you've won the lottery. And I have to say, every day I go to work, I realize I have the greatest job in the world. Sure, we see some bad stuff, but it's everything I wanted and more. It's such a great profession. There's such good balance. It's been fantastic. I'm a year and a half on the job. I'm still considered quite junior. I still have some things to learn and some, career development that I've got to go through for training for at least the next 10 years. I've got to go back to training to learn how to drive the fire truck and operate the apparatus. But I look forward to it, and it's fantastic. And our schedule is really awesome too. It affords me the time to do some of the other things that I'm passionate about. Whether it's hanging out with my kids, whether it's doing some substitute teaching on the side, which allows me to use my degree still, or my bully prevention work that I've been doing over the last 5-6 years. So I'm really blessed to be doing this dream profession and starting it, at the age of 42, I started, and I'm really lucky, Lyle.
That's awesome. And do you guys, do you have to go down the poles when the fire alarm goes off? Is that still something that's done?
Yeah, that's still a thing. So we my shift, I work 2 daytime shifts and then 2 nighttime. So 2 10-hour shifts and 2 12-hour shifts. And basically, when we're at the fire hall at night, if there are no calls, we have dorms and we try to get some rest, because you never know when the call is going to come. And some of the studies, recent studies, have indicated that shift work is sort of the sleep, the altering sleep patterns of working a night shift are really detrimental to your health. So we try and combat that by resting as much as we can between calls, especially at night. In the daytime, we're usually drilling or prepping or cleaning or whatever it is we have to do between calls. But at night, after a certain point, we'll shut it down. And if there are no calls, well, then we're rested and ready. But if a call comes in the middle of the night, which they usually always do, multiple calls, you jump out of bed, you slip your boots on, you slide down the pole, and within 30 to 45 seconds, we're dressed and out the door in the truck and going on the call.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I was gonna say, it's kind of like running out of the tunnel in football, except you get to do it multiple times daily.
Exactly. Yeah, you play a bunch of games every day.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so let's finish off. I like to finish off with what I call the top of the mountain moment. So kind of looking back on your football journey and your life journey and all you've gone through and the ups and downs and the trials and everything that you've gone through. Is there a favorite moment, a favorite story, some words of wisdom for other players? How do you want to finish off with the top of the mountain moment?
There's so many.
That's a lot, yeah.
The biggest thing what I learned, if I could, almost every story that seems to prevail in my mind when I think, I want to tell all these stories, but I don't have time to. It's usually a story of, where I was knocked down in some fashion, whether it was physically or emotionally, where, it felt like it was the worst time of your life. Yeah. And you pick yourself back up and you choose a positive attitude and you get back to work. Like I said, I mentioned I had been stabbed before my 5th year. And, if I would have wallowed in self-pity, I would have never made the NFL. I mentioned I had sat on the bench that whole 2014 year. Well, if I chose a negative attitude that year, I probably wouldn't have come back in 2015 and won my job back and played, in 2015. And there are many stories like that where, I felt like it was the worst and I could have chosen to feel sorry for myself and negative attitude, but I decided that I'm going to rise above and I'm going to choose to put the right foot forward and do the right things regardless of the circumstance. And every time I've always won. And I use those lessons, honestly, in my personal life now. Life is not easy. Things happen. It's not just in sport. And, when things happen and you feel at your lowest, I now have a frame of reference for any of that, I choose positive all the time, even though sometimes, it's okay to feel bad and feel disappointed, but don't feel bad or disappointed too long, because you're the only one that's going to get yourself out of whatever negative situation it is. So I feel, if anything, football and my career was made up of moments like that pretty much defined me. And, like I said, I use them now in my life, in my current career, in my personal life, and I'm forever grateful for that, for those experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a great story. Your story is a great story of many things. First, the importance of goal setting, like you did back in McGill. Wanting to get to the Shrine Bowl, and kind of being kind of naive about the difficulty of it, but not limiting yourself and putting yourself in a box and saying, you can't do it, and listening to all the naysayers and just going for your goal and achieving that, and also making it to the pros and being a professional athlete in the NFL and in the CFL, and for lasting for 16 years professionally, and just a great story of determination and perseverance and being selfless and putting the team first, and also with your Tom Pate Award and all that you do for others in the community, and even now doing stuff for the community as a firefighter and teacher and anti-bullying. So it's a great story. You do great things. Just want to thank you for coming on, Randy. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. You're a great guy and one of my favorite teammates, and I just want to say thanks for coming on the show.
Well, Lyle, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I thank you for reaching out. I think it's fantastic that you use your platform to help other people look forward to transition from their careers, whether it's football or any other sport or any career. Like I think if we can get people to look forward to transition as opposed to fearing it, you know what? You'll have a lot more healthier minds out there, and people will be able to make that transition easier. And I think what you're doing now, exposing people with your podcast and your social media accounts, I took notice, and it's something that I have a keen interest in. And again, I want to keep encouraging you in the work you're doing, because I think it's fantastic.
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate that. And thanks for coming on. And you might have to have you on again to tell more stories and to get more in depth on your career and things that have happened. But thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks, Lyle.
All right, Randy. Take care.
Thank you for listening to After the Gridiron. If you're a fan of the show, please make sure you subscribe to the show and also leave a rating and review. By doing that, you also help spread the word about the podcast and assist others in finding the show, so more people can enjoy this great content. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, with the links to those being found on the website. Your support is very much appreciated. Also, please visit the resources page on the website for links to our sponsors and affiliates. Your support helps to keep the show running, so go to www.atgridiron.com/resources to check them out. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you when we kick off our next episode.